Alright guys, we got the Galaxy S20 FE versus the LG Velvet. This was a requested video, and I'm assuming you're coming from the Velvet here and you're thinking about upgrading to the S20 FE. So first off, let's just check out the prices of both of these devices here. So the Velvet, I believe, is hanging around 300 bucks brand new on Amazon, and I'll have those links down below. But right now it seems like it's sitting at $289 right now, renewed $243. You can find one, a new one, T-Mobile lock, $254. So we can say it's sitting around $250 to 300 bucks. On the FE, we are sitting at 600 bucks for a new one, 434 for a refurbished one. That is the one that I have right now. And yeah, so it's between like 500 and 400 bucks. So it is kind of a big price gap here. So you got one that's around, let's say 300 bucks. This one extra 100 bucks, or if you get it new, 200 bucks. Is that worth the upgrade here if you're thinking about giving up your Velvet for this phone? So let's go ahead and find out here. Now let's go ahead and start off with the display here. So you do have on here two very nice displays. On the S20 FE, you do have a Super AMOLED 120 Hz display. It is HDR10 Plus at 6.5 inches. It's also 1080p, 407 for the PPI. On the Velvet, you have a POLED display, and as you can see, it's a much bigger display at 6.8 inches. 1080p, 395 for the PPI. So the Velvet is overall just a really tall phone. As you can see, it's a big phone. So if you have small hands, you might not like the Velvet. And we can see some minor differences with the display. So as far as color and just display quality, they both look pretty similar. Obviously, the S20 FE is going to give you a little bit more of a colorful looking panel here. But when I say they both look pretty close, they both look close. Where you see the difference is the Velvet has a curved display, as you can see. So it does kind of curve, and it depends on whether you like curved displays or not. I really don't get accidental touches with curved displays. I use the 7 Pro. So it really just depends on the person. Like when you put a case on, it's really hard to get accidental touches. And also you have the punch hole, which I prefer over the water drop notch on the Velvet as well. But they both have pretty slim bezels. S20 FE completely flat display. So it really comes down to display size. I think they both look good color wise, but also you have to take into consideration 120 Hz versus no high refresh rate on the Velvet. So that is also something. I do prefer the 120 Hz on the S20 FE. It is very silky smooth to go from 120 Hz to 60 Hz on the Velvet. Now the Velvet is very smooth, don't get me wrong, but once you experience 120 Hz, you're definitely not going to want to go back. So display here, I would definitely give it to the S20 here. So let's talk about hardware on both of these phones. On the Velvet here, as you can see, we got a shiny mirror finish here. It's a glass and metal phone here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and I think it looks really good here. As you can see, it's very slim. Power button, volume rockers, your Google Assistant button is on here as well. And this phone also has a headphone jack at the bottom. So unfortunately, there's no quad DAC, but you do have USB Type-C and stereo speakers here. On the S20 FE, Samsung decided to go with a plastic, back here. It's a matte finish, which I think looks really good, especially in the other colors. And then you have a metal railing, so it does still have a premium feel, but not quite as premium as the Velvet. It is also IP68 dust and water resistant, power button, volume rockers. But on the S20 FE, you will notice one thing: there is no headphone jack on here. So if you're somebody that really loves the headphone jack, you do not have it on here. You also have USB Type-C and stereo speakers. So I would definitely give it to the Velvet when it comes to design here. Alright, so let's talk about performance on both of these phones. So on the S20 FE, we have Android 11 with One UI. We also have the Snapdragon 865 and Adreno 650. Micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. On the Velvet, we have it is upgraded with the Android 11. I haven't gotten it on mine yet, but this one is running Android 10, Snapdragon 765, and Adreno 620. micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM as well. So you are getting a pretty nice spec bump if you go with the S20 FE here. You can see it beats it out in the single and multi-core score. But if we go ahead and launch applications, let's go ahead and see, you know, some real world use here. So we'll just go ahead and launch both phones. S20 there. We'll go ahead and do Google Earth. So you can see you're going from pretty much like a mid-range chip kind of to a more flagship like chip. So you can see it's definitely noticeably a little bit faster here. Let's try a game here. Boom, we're in. We're in. So, you know, you kind of get the point here. You will get definitely faster performance on the S20 FE. Now, let's check out our gaming performance. Go ahead and launch PUBG here. And it looks like we're going to be in on the S20 first here. So we are in and ready to go. So you can see now we're in on the Velvet. So you can see that was a pretty big time difference there. So if you're a gamer, you can see that the power sort of comes in. If you're gaming a lot on these phones, you'll see that the S20 is going to load those games up very quickly. So I also want to talk about performance with PUBG as well. So let's go ahead and talk about that here. So your settings on the Velvet, you have Ultra, HD, and then you can't go to HDR. And you're pretty much going to get flagship level gaming experience on here. So you can see extreme, 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 and then we can download the Ultra HD pack. So if you are a gamer and gaming is something that you do a lot on your phone, then obviously you're going to like the S20 FE as far as gaming performance, because you're just getting better frame rates, you're getting better graphics, you're overall getting a, you know, more powerful experience, and you can also experience those games you know, with the 120 hertz here. The Velvet, for the price that you're paying, is a pretty good gaming device as well. You get a very nice big speaker on here too, and it plays games fine. I've never had an issue gaming on here. But like I said, if you're somebody that really cares about gaming and you want that upgrade, definitely you'll have a noticeable upgrade when it comes to gaming for sure. Now both of these phones have stereo speakers. Let's go ahead and check out and see which one is going to sound better. Max volume, starting with the Velvet. Now, the Velvet is a little bit louder than the S20 FE, but the S20 FE does have a cleaner sound. So you do have louder bass, but overall the Velvet is louder. Yeah, they're just equalized kind of different, because I can hear the 808s on this one, but I can't really hear the kicks. I can hear the kicks on this one, but I can't hear the 808s. So I would give audio experience to the Velvet here, because the speakers are too close, and also you have a headphone jack. So I think your overall audio experience is just going to be better because of that. Let's talk about your additional features. So you do have NFC on both of these devices as well. And let's go ahead and check out our toggles, since that's something people always ask about. And I believe the S20 FE is definitely going to be a little bit more featured packed. So with the Velvet here, We do have LG 3D sound engine. Like I said, we have NFC on here. It's very bare minimum on here. Screen recording is on here. Screen sharing is on here, and file sharing. And that seems to be about it as far as essential features. And then obviously one big thing with the Velvet that you cannot ignore is that you do have dual screen case capability. So the dual screen case turns this into a multitasking beast. You can see that toggle right there. So if you want to buy that dual screen accessory, it will turn it basically into two phones. Now on the S20 FE, you do have some nice features on here. You have your wireless power saving or wireless power sharing. So if I wanted to pretty much just let's charge the Velvet here. As you can see, I can charge the LG Velvet with the S20s FE. How cool is that? Also, on the S20, we do have, no, what in the world is going on? We do have our secured folders on here. We also have Samsung desktop experience on here, Dolby Atmos. So it really comes down, screen recording is on here. It really comes down to two things. Do you want the dual screen case capability just in case you want to use, it as two phones? Or do you want the wireless power sharing, the Samsung desktop experience? I think those are the two essential things with the S20 FE. The secure folders is, it's okay. You can kind of download certain apps for that on Android, but definitely those are the two things you're picking from. Let's talk about security. So on the Velvet here, we do have a in-display fingerprint sensor, but unfortunately there is no option for face unlock on this guy. On the S20 FE, we do have an in-display fingerprint sensor, and we also have face unlock on here. So that is one thing that I appreciate. I can't really get it from behind the camera, but I appreciate that with the S20 FE. I don't know why LG took that away, but just to have that option, just in case you have something on your hands or you got gloves on or whatever the case may be, I like having the option to have face unlock along with an in-display fingerprint sensor. So security, I think, is just going to be overall more convenient on the S20 FE for that reason. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the cameras. I think this is where you're getting a very good upgrade. I do think the S20 FE's cameras are better than the Velvet's. So definitely, if you're upgrading for that reason, I think just the overall stills, low light, everything, video, I think it is definitely a nice step above the Velvet here. So on the S20 FE, you do have a 12 megapixel standard, a 8 megapixel telephoto, 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K on the front and back, and then you have 32 megapixel selfie cam as well. So you can see the shots just turned out really great. That was one of the main things when this phone came out, and it's been getting software updates to improve the camera. So you can see dynamic range is good. The ultra wide is pretty close to the main lens as well. You can get detail. Like I said, low light is pretty good. Selfie cam is good. The video is good. This is a very good camera, so I do want to stress that. This is a pretty awesome camera. And the Velvet does have a very good camera setup too. It still has the same triple camera setup, 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel depth, and then you have 4K video, but then you only have 1080p on the selfie cam, and that is 16 megapixels. And as you can see from the shot, the Velvet also takes very good photos, very good natural colors. I think that's what it definitely excels at. Good detail, good dynamic range. But if I was going to pick from the two, I would go with the S20 FE. And I think it's definitely a good, bump up. If you're coming from the Velvet, you'll definitely notice improved image quality here. Now, what about battery life? So on the Velvet, you do have a 4,300 milliamp battery, 25 watt charging, and you also have wireless charging at 9 watts. On the S20 FE, you have a 4,500 milliamp battery, 25 watt charging, wireless charging, and reverse wireless charging. Basically, I'm getting slightly better battery life on the Velvet, and I think that has something to do with the, it's not having 120 hertz. So out of the bunch, out of these two, I think you'll get better battery life on the Velvet just because it does not have that 120 hertz that is, running. Now, you can turn 120 hertz off on the S20 FE, But honestly, if you're gonna pay the price for this phone, there's really no reason to turn that off. You really want to just keep it on. So battery life, I will give a slight edge to the Velvet. I think it performs great. These are two all-day phones, honestly, for battery life. But I've never used these phones on 5G. They just don't have it in the area I live in. So 5G, if you're on 5G, it could be a completely different story. But from what I've seen, just using the phones, on 4G, it's fine. So you can definitely have good faith that these phones will last you all day. So that is pretty much it. I think these are two extremely solid phones. I would say that, take into consideration, I think the S20 FE is a solid upgrade if you're thinking about upgrading from the Velvet. So what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.